They say you never really know your children. I learned that truth the day my wife died, when my son looked at me with dead eyes and said, "Make dinner for my boss tonight. Don't embarrass me." I didn't know whether to grieve or obey. But when that boss walked through the door, I saw something that made my blood run colder than any February night in Minneapolis. Sometimes the past doesn't come knocking on your door. My son didn't know his boss was, "Thank you for being here with me tonight. Drop a comment. Where are you right now, and what time is it where you are?" Because the moment that stranger walked through my door, time stopped. And I need to know I'm not alone in this. They say the worst day of your life comes without warning. Mine started with a phone call at 3:47 a.m. and ended with my son telling me to get back in the kitchen. The nurse's voice was kind, but her words cut like a blade. "Mr. Hayes, I'm so sorry. Your wife passed away 20 minutes ago. Heart failure. We did everything we could. Margaret, my Margaret, gone." I stood in our bedroom, my bedroom now, holding the phone, watching snow fall past the window. February in Minneapolis is always brutal, but that morning the cold came from inside me. 42 years of marriage. 42 years of her laugh, her touch, her way of humming while she folded laundry. All of it gone in a single moment. I didn't cry, not yet. I think I was too numb. Or maybe too old. After 63 years on this earth, you learn that some pain is too big for tears. By noon, the house was full of people I barely recognized. Bradley had called everyone neighbors, old colleagues, people from Margaret's book club. They brought casseroles and sympathy cards and empty condolences. "She's in a better place," they said. "Time heals all wounds." I wanted to tell them that Margaret was the better place, and time doesn't heal anything. It just teaches you how to limp. Bradley stood in the doorway, his suit perfectly pressed, his face perfectly blank. My son, 34 years old, tall and sharp-featured like his mother, but with none of her warmth. He'd changed after he married Veronica 3 years ago, or maybe I'd just stopped pretending I didn't see it. "Dad," his voice was flat. "Edward Sullivan is coming for dinner tonight." I stared at him. "Your mother just died." "I know that." He checked his watch. "But Edward is the CEO of Sullivan Industries. He's my boss. This dinner was scheduled weeks ago, and I'm not canceling. My promotion depends on this." "Bradley, I can't—" "You will." His eyes were cold, stranger's eyes. "You'll cook, you'll serve, and you'll smile. Edward Sullivan controls my future. You mess this up, you'll regret it." He walked away before I could answer. I stood there in the kitchen. Margaret's kitchen, where she'd made thousands of meals, where she taught Bradley to crack eggs when he was 5, and I wondered when my son had turned into someone I didn't recognize. I cooked. What else could I do? Pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans, Margaret's recipes. My hands moved on autopilot while my mind stayed at the hospital, replaying that phone call over and over. Edward Sullivan arrived at 7. He was older than I expected, maybe 65, silver-haired, with the kind of calm authority that comes from wealth and power. Bradley fawned over him like a nervous puppy. I served dinner in silence, playing the role of the obedient father. But then I saw it, Edward's hand reaching for his wine glass, and on his finger a gold ring with a small engraved compass. The exact same ring I wore. The exact same ring my father had given me 40 years ago before he died. My father only had 2 of those rings made, one for each son. I looked up at Edward Sullivan, this stranger in my house, and something clicked into place. The shape of his jaw, the way he held his fork, the faint scar above his left eyebrow. I knew those features. I'd seen them in old photographs and fading memories. But it couldn't be. My brother was gone, lost. 45 years of silence. Edward caught me staring. For a brief moment something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe, or grief. Then he looked away and the moment passed. Bradley snapped his fingers. "Dad, more wine." I refilled the glass. My hands were shaking. As Edward left that night, I stood in the doorway watching him walk to his car. He paused, looked back at me, and his gaze dropped to the ring on my hand. He knew. And suddenly the worst day of my life became something else entirely. Something dangerous. I was washing dishes when the doorbell rang again. Edward Sullivan stood on my porch, and this time he was crying. Quiet tears sliding down the face of a man who probably hadn't cried in decades. Snow dusted his expensive coat, silver hair catching the porch light. When he looked at me, I saw something I'd spent 45 years trying to forget my brother's eyes. Kiernan, he whispered. Not a question. I nodded, unable to speak. He held up his hand, showing me a ring. Our father gave me this the day before he left. He said he was giving you one too. I thought you'd died, or disappeared, or his voice broke. I looked for you. For 45 years I looked. I showed him mine, the twin, the proof. I never stopped being your brother, he said. And the dam broke. 2 old men in a Minneapolis February crying like children. He told me the story. I knew parts of it, the divorce in 1980, when I was 15 and he was 20. Our mother took him, changed his name to Sullivan, moved to Chicago. Our father took me, kept Hayes, stayed in Minnesota. Mom had money. Dad had pride. Neither had mercy. Edward grew up in penthouses, went to Harvard, built Sullivan Industries into a tech empire. He married, divorced, never had kids, became the kind of man who controls boardrooms. I grew up above a hardware store, went to community college, became a shop teacher. Married Margaret at 22. Bradley came a year later. We were never rich, but we were happy. I hired investigators, Edward said, for decades. But Hayes is common, and you never use social media. I didn't know you were in Minneapolis until tonight. He laughed bitterly. Your son works for me. And I had no idea. Margaret, I said, did you? No, he shook his head. I never met her. And now I never will. I'm so sorry. My wife was dead. My brother was alive. Edward steadied me. You can't stay here. Not with Bradley. I saw the way he treats you. He's my son. He's a bully. I've seen his type. He doesn't care about you, only what you can give him. I wanted to argue, but I'd spent all day watching my son treat his mother's death like an inconvenience. Come stay with me, Edward said. I have room. You shouldn't be alone. I looked at the house, Margaret's house, but he was right. Okay, I whispered. A sound on the stairs. Bradley stood there, pale with rage. You're moving in with him. That man could destroy everything I've worked for. Your mother just died, Edward said, and you're worried about your career. Stay out of this, Bradley hissed. Not anymore, Edward said. You're fired, and your father's coming with me. Bradley looked at me with pure hatred, and I realized I didn't know my son at all. I came home to find the locks changed and my clothes in garbage bags on the sidewalk. The next morning, Edward drove me to Riverside Tower to get my things. The doorman wouldn't let us up. Your son's orders. Mr. Hayes. I'm sorry. 3 black garbage bags sat near the loading dock, my name scrawled on masking tape. 40 years of my life thrown out like trash. Edward's jaw tightened. Let's go talk to him. We took the elevator to Unit 502. I knocked. Bradley opened immediately, like he'd been waiting. You're trespassing, he said. I live here. Lived. He held up his phone, showing a document. This apartment's in my name. Has been for 18 months. You have no legal right to be here. 18 months? Right after Margaret's first heart scare, when Bradley asked us to sign papers' insurance forms, he said. Estate planning. He'd lied. You stole our home, I whispered. I protected my investment, he said coldly. You and Mom were getting old. Forgetful. Someone had to manage assets properly. Edward stepped forward. You manipulated elderly parents into signing over property. That's elder abuse. Fraud. Prove it. Bradley smiled. The deed is legal. The signatures are real. And you fired me. So I'm evicting you. Behind him, Veronica appeared, her pregnant belly visible. Her eyes were red, but she positioned herself perfectly for the hallway camera. Please don't fight, she said softly. This is stressful for the baby. Call the police, Bradley told her. Tell them there are intruders. Detective Roger Stanley arrived 10 minutes later. Tired eyes, careful politeness. Mr. Hayes, do you have documentation proving you live here? I didn't. Everything was inside. The apartment's in my name, Bradley said. These men are trespassing, Stanley exhaled. If the property is legally his, this becomes a civil matter. You'll need a lawyer. His wife just died, Edward snapped. His belongings are in garbage bags. I understand, sir, but my hands are tied. Bradley crossed his arms, victorious. I wanted to hit him. For the first time in my life, I wanted to hit my own son. Instead, I stepped back. We loaded the garbage bags into Edward's car in silence. As we drove away, I looked back. Bradley stood at the window phone to his ear, watching us like a problem he'd finally solved. And I thought, what else has he taken from me? My home? My dignity? What else was I about to lose? I found Margaret's diary and a box of her things that Bradley had thrown out. I wish I never had. Back at Edward's estate, I started going through the bags. Most of it was clothes and books, things Bradley didn't want. Then I found a small cardboard box labeled Mom's Desk. Inside was a leather journal, the kind Margaret used to buy at the bookstore downtown. Her handwriting covered the pages. I almost didn't open it. It felt like violating her privacy, even though she was gone. But something made me read. October 15th, 2024. Bradley came by again today. He's been asking about the Riverside County land, the property Kiernan's father left us. It's worth a lot, now maybe $850,000. Bradley says we should put it in his name for estate planning. He says we're getting old, that we need to protect our assets. But the way he looked at me, I don't trust him anymore. My hands started shaking. December 3rd, 2024. My heart medication looks different. The pills used to be dark blue. Now they're lighter, almost white. I asked Bradley about it when he picked up my prescription. He said the pharmacy changed suppliers. Said it's the same medicine, just a different manufacturer. But I don't feel right. I'm getting weaker. The doctor says my heart is failing faster than expected. I couldn't breathe. January 18th, 2025. God forgive me for writing this. But I think my son is poisoning me. I think he's been switching my pills. Every time he brings my medication from the pharmacy, I get worse. I tried to tell Kiernan, but I don't want to break his heart. What kind of mother accuses her own son of murder? But I'm scared. I'm so scared. And I don't know how much time I have left. The diary fell from my hands. She knew. Margaret knew Bradley was killing her, and she died anyway because she didn't want to hurt me. I made a sound, not quite a scream, not quite a sob. Just raw animal grief. Edward found me on the floor, the diary open beside me. He read it, his face going white. Then he pulled out his phone and called Detective Stanley. 20 minutes later, Stanley arrived at the estate. He read the diary carefully, his expression grim. This is significant evidence, he said quietly. But Mr. Hayes, I have to be honest. A diary is hearsay. We'd need the actual medication bottle to prove tampering. We'd need pharmacy records, witnesses, physical evidence. The bottle's gone, I whispered. Bradley must have thrown it away. Then we need to find it, Edward said, or find the pharmacist who filled the prescription. Stanley nodded. I'll open an investigation, but without hard evidence, the DA won't prosecute. I'm sorry. He left. The house went quiet. I sat there holding Margaret's diary, reading her words over and over. I'm so scared. Edward put his hand on my shoulder. We'll prove it, Kiernan. I swear to you we'll prove it. I looked up at him, and for the first time since Margaret died, I felt something other than grief. I felt rage. Cold, focused rage. My son killed his mother, I said, and I'm going to prove it. Leonard Foster had been filling Margaret's prescriptions for 15 years. He was also the man who helped my son kill her. The next morning I drove to Foster's pharmacy alone. Edward offered to come, but this I needed to do myself. The place sat on a quiet corner in South Minneapolis, the kind of pharmacy where everyone knew everyone. Leonard had filled half the neighborhood's prescriptions. He'd filled mine. I walked in. Leonard was behind the counter. When he saw me, his face went white. Kiernan, he said slowly, I heard about Margaret. I'm so sorry. Are you? I said. Because I found her diary. She wrote about her medication changing, about how she got weaker every time Bradley picked it up. Leonard's hands shook. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. I stepped closer, my phone recording in my pocket. Tell me the truth, or I call the police and they pull every prescription record you've ever filed. He stared at me. Then something cracked inside him. $6,500, he whispered. That's what Bradley paid. He said his mother needed to be manageable, weak enough to sign papers but not sick enough for a hospital. He told me to switch her heart meds to a lower dosage. Same pill, just weaker. My fists clenched. You killed her. I didn't think Leonard's voice broke. I thought she'd just be tired. Confused. Once she signed the land papers, I thought he'd tell me to switch her back, but he never did. And then she died. I finished. Because you and my son murdered her. Leonard looked sick. He threatened me. Said if I refused, he'd report my old licensing violations. I'd lose everything. I don't care. I leaned in. You have records of the dosage change? He nodded, pulling up files. December 2024. Margaret Hayes. Dosage reduction listed under patient request a lie. Print them, I said. He printed the sheets. Then, desperate, he blurted something else. Bradley's sterile. Has been since 2018. I filled the prescription after the diagnosis. So that baby Veronica's carrying, it's not his. I stared. Another lie, another rot beneath the surface. Where's the original medication bottle, I asked. Leonard hesitated. Bradley kept it. Insurance, in case I turned on him. It's in some old storage unit on East Hennepin. I overheard him once. East Hennepin. Evidence. I took the records and headed for the door. Kiernan, Leonard called, voice breaking. I never thought he'd let her die. I swear you thought wrong, I said. I walked out with a recording, a confession, and a location. The old storage unit on East Hennepin, Bradley's insurance. And now I was going to take it. Edward's accountant found the money trail in less than an hour. $180,000 in loans taken in my name. And most of it went to one man, Jordan Phillips. 2 days after the pharmacy, Edward's finance team delivered the report. Bradley had used a forged power of attorney to take out loans tied to my credit, my identity, my life. The funds moved through shell accounts, but the trail stopped at a 28-year-old architect named Jordan Phillips. Edward made one call. 20 minutes later, we were sitting across from Jordan in a downtown Minneapolis coffee shop. He looked young, polished, nervous, designer coat, perfect hair. When Edward slid the documents toward him, his expression collapsed. I can explain, he said quickly. Then do it, Edward replied. Why do you have $180,000 that was stolen from my brother? Jordan swallowed. I didn't know it was stolen. Veronica told me it was family money. Veronica, I said quietly. Bradley's wife. Jordan nodded slowly. We've been involved since August. She said the marriage was over, that Bradley kept her around for image. And the baby, I asked? Jordan hesitated. Then, it's mine. Bradley can't have children. Veronica said he knows he just doesn't care as long as his life looks perfect from the outside. I thought I couldn't be more disgusted with my son. I was wrong. The money Edward pressed. $80,000 landed in your account. Why hush money? Jordan whispered. Veronica said Bradley didn't want a scandal, didn't want me trying to claim the baby. She said it was to keep everything quiet. And he exhaled. I took it. That money destroyed my credit, I said. It was stolen from me so you could stay silent. Jordan stared down at the table. I didn't know. God, I didn't know. Do you have proof, Edward asked, of the affair? The transfers? Jordan nodded. He scrolled through his phone texts from Veronica Bank. Confirmations, emails about keeping Bradley satisfied, about timing, about the future. I'll send everything he said. I didn't sign up for fraud, or whatever this is. Edward put our lawyer Sandra Powell on speaker. In 5 minutes, she was outlining a case fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, financial abuse, civil liability. Jordan looked at me as we stood. Your son isn't careless, he said quietly. He planned this, and Veronica helped him. She's not a victim. I walked out of that coffee shop understanding something new. Bradley didn't just betray me, he built his life on it. I never wanted to be on television, but when reporter Jessica Monroe called and said she wanted to hear my side of the story, I knew it was time to speak up. Jessica worked for WCCO-TV, the CBS affiliate in Minneapolis. She'd heard about my case through Edward's lawyer. A father betrayed by his son, she said. People need to hear this. 3 days later, I sat in a studio chair under bright lights. Jessica sat across from me, her expression kind, but professional. Mr. Hayes, tell us about the day your wife died. I took a breath, and I told them everything. The phone call at 3 a.m, my son forcing me to cook dinner for his boss while my wife's body was still warm. Being thrown out of my own home, stolen through forged documents. Finding my wife's diary, her words haunting me. I think my son is poisoning me. The pharmacist who admitted switching her medication for money. The $180,000 stolen in my name. The daughter-in-law carrying another man's child. I didn't say Bradley's name. The details painted the picture clearly enough. How do you feel now? Jessica asked softly. Betrayed, I said, but not broken. My wife is gone. My son is lost to me, but I'm still here, and I'm going to make sure justice is served. The interview aired that evening. Within an hour, it exploded. Social media lit up Facebook, Twitter, Reddit. Millions of views. Thousands of comments pouring in messages of support and outrage. People shared their own stories of family betrayal. My pain became a rallying cry. By midnight, the internet had identified Bradley. His LinkedIn, his Facebook photos of him and Veronica at charity events, smiling like the perfect couple. The comments turned vicious. Murderer, fraud, scum. The next morning, Sullivan Industries released a public statement. Bradley Hayes was no longer employed by the company, effective immediately, due to serious ethical violations and breach of trust. The firing Edward had delivered weeks ago in private was now front-page news. My phone rang an hour later. Unknown number. "You bastard!" Bradley's voice shook with rage. "You just destroyed my life on television. My career's over. We can't go anywhere without being harassed. This is your fault." "No, Bradley," I said calmly. "It's yours. You want a war." His voice dropped to something cold and dangerous. "You'll get one. I'll make you pay for this, old man." He hung up. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You want a war, old man? You'll get one. I'll burn everything you love to the ground." I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. Edward found me on the couch phone in my hand. "What happened?" I showed him the message. His face went pale. "We call the police. Now." "They can't do anything," I said quietly. "Anonymous threat. No proof." "Then what do we do?" I looked at the message again. "I'll burn everything you love to the ground. Not a metaphor. A promise." "We keep going," I said. "We find the evidence. We prove what he did. And we end this." But that night, lying in Edward's guest room, I couldn't sleep, because I knew my son, and I knew he meant every word. Breaking into my son's storage unit wasn't legal, but neither was murder. I couldn't wait for the police. Not after that text, "I'll burn everything you love to the ground." Bradley wasn't bluffing. And I remembered Leonard's warning about the old storage unit on East Hennepin, where Bradley kept his insurance. If my son had buried evidence, I would dig it up. I called Arthur Campbell, an old colleague turned locksmith. He didn't hesitate. "Midnight. Bring Edward. If this goes bad, he'll need a lawyer." East Hennepin storage was an industrial maze of concrete and rusted metal. At night, it looked like a holding facility for the condemned. Arthur waited by Unit 47 tools, ready eyes tense. "You understand this is breaking and entering," he whispered. "If anyone catches us." "They won't," I said. The lock yielded in under 2 minutes. The metal door rolled up with a hollow groan. Inside, boxes, furniture, junk years of Bradley's discarded life. But in the back, sitting alone, was a small cardboard box, with a single word scrawled across it, "Insurance." My hands shook opening it. Inside lay everything. Margaret's pill bottle, the original prescription, half full. Dark blue pills, exactly as she'd described in her diary. Not the pale substitutions Leonard had been coerced to use. Proof of tampering. Proof Bradley had orchestrated the switch long before Leonard confessed. Beneath it, Leonard's pharmacy records. Date stamped, authorized by Bradley's signature. The $6,500 consulting payment, annotated in clean type. A paper trail of motive method and manipulation. At the very bottom, Riverside County land transfer documents. $850,000, signed by Margaret. Except it wasn't her handwriting. Edward leaned in, voice thin. He forged her signature, on property worth nearly $1 million, and kept every shred of evidence, I said, in case Leonard ever turned on him. Insurance. Edward began photographing everything, every page label signature. Even if it's inadmissible, the record lives somewhere beyond him now. Arthur hovered at the doorway, pale. "This will get thrown out in court. You know that. No warrant, no permission chain of custody broken." "Then we use it another way," Edward said. I slipped the pill bottle into my jacket. The documents went into Edward's folder. We closed the unit, locked it again, left no trace. Driving away evidence heavy in my lap, I felt something foreign victory. For the first time since Margaret died, justice seemed tangible. We had Bradley's own leverage turned against him. His secrets, his backup plan, his insurance. I didn't know he was still one move ahead. I didn't know he'd installed a camera in the unit months ago angled at the lock. Motion triggered, silently recording. I didn't know he watched us enter, watched us open the box, watched us take it. And I didn't know he'd already decided the next step. Fire. Bradley wanted to meet, just the two of us. No lawyers, no police. I knew it was a trap, but I went. The call came the morning after the storage unit. His voice was calm. "Dad, We need to talk. Face to face. Hotel Ivy, room 412. Tomorrow at 2. Edward shook his head when I told him, "Don't go. He knows you have the evidence. That's why I have to." I checked the recording app. Minnesota was a one-party consent state. This time the evidence would hold. Hotel Ivy was upscale. I rode to the fourth-floor phone recording in my jacket. I knocked. Bradley opened the door, in a suit, even smiling. "Dad." "Come in." The suite overlooked downtown Minneapolis. He didn't sit. "I want to make you an offer. $100,000. You drop the investigation, stop talking, disappear. We both move on." I stared at my son. "You killed your mother. No amount fixes that." His smile died. "She was going to give that land to you. $850,000. I worked for years, and she wanted to hand it to her loser husband. I earned that land, so you poisoned her. I made her manageable." His voice cracked. "Leonard did what I paid him for. Mom got weaker. I got signatures. It was clean. And it would have stayed that way if you hadn't interfered. She was your mother. She was an obstacle. And you're worse. You turned the city against me. You ruined my career. But I'm done playing nice." He stepped closer, voice ablade. "I'm going to destroy you. And Edward. I'll burn it all down." I stood, pulled out my phone, stopped the recording. "You just confessed to murder. I have every word." His face drained. "You, Minnesota's a one-party consent state. I can record legally. Everything you said is admissible." For a moment he just stared, then snapped. He lunged, slamming me into the wall. He was younger, stronger. Before he hit again, the door burst open. Hotel security grabbed him. "We got a call about a disturbance." "I'm leaving," I said. "He can stay." Bradley fought them, screaming, "You think you've won? I'll destroy you." I walked out. In the elevator, my hands shook as I checked the recording. Clear audio. Every confession. I had him. Outside in the cold Minneapolis afternoon, I looked up. Fourth floor, room 412. Bradley stood at the window phone to his ear, staring down, and I realized something. He wasn't done yet. It had been 3 days since the hotel. 3 days since I'd recorded Bradley's confession. Edward wanted me to stay at his estate, wait for the police to build their case. But I couldn't. Not yet. I needed to see the house. 847 Maple Street. The home Margaret and I had bought 40 years ago when Bradley was just a baby. We'd sold it 2 years back, Bradley insisted, but the new owners hadn't moved in yet. The place sat empty, waiting, like a memory, frozen in time. I drove there alone late afternoon in February. The cold bit through my coat as I stood on the sidewalk, looking up at the craftsman-style house with its faded blue paint and sagging porch. How many times had I walked through that door? How many mornings had I kissed Margaret goodbye in that kitchen? How many nights had I taught Bradley his homework at that dining room table? The lockbox was still on the front door. Realtors hadn't removed it yet. I knew the code, old habits. Inside the house was hollow. No furniture, no pictures on the walls. Just empty rooms and echoes. But the bones were still there. The creaking floorboards Margaret always complained about. The window seat where she'd read every Sunday morning. The closet where Bradley used to hide during thunderstorms when he was 5. I walked through, slowly touching the walls, like I could pull the memories out of them. The kitchen. I'd taught Bradley to crack eggs here. He was 7, so serious, so determined to do it perfectly. Margaret had laughed, said he got his stubbornness from me. The living room? Christmas mornings. Bradley ripping open presents, his face lit up with joy. When had that joy turned to greed? The bedroom. Margaret's side of the bed where she'd sit and read her diary, where she'd written those final terrible words. "I think my son is poisoning me." I stood there, my chest tight, and I let myself cry. For her, for the life we'd built, for the son I'd lost. "I'm sorry, Margaret," I whispered to the empty room. "I'm so sorry I didn't see it sooner." The house didn't answer. It never would again. I was about to leave when I heard it. A sound downstairs. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. My blood went cold. I wasn't alone. I moved to the top of the stairs, listening. The footsteps stopped. Then I heard something else, liquid, splashing on wood, and a smell. Sharp chemical. Gasoline. I descended slowly, my heart pounding. At the bottom of the stairs, I saw him. Bradley stood in the middle of the living room, a red gas can in his hands. He was pouring fuel across the floor, methodical calm, The fumes filled the air, choking and bitter. He looked up at me and smiled. "Dad," he said pleasantly, "I was hoping you'd come." "Bradley," my voice came out hoarse. "What are you doing?" He set the can down, gasoline pooling at his feet. "What does it look like I'm finishing this? You took everything from me. My job, my reputation, my future. Now I'm going to take your life." "I didn't take anything from you. You did this to yourself." "No." His voice went cold sharp. "You did this. You and that bastard Edward. You went on TV, you told the world I was a murderer. You destroyed me. And for what, some self-righteous crusade for a woman who's already dead. That woman was your mother. That woman," he hissed, "was going to give everything to you. Everything I worked for. Everything I earned." I took a step closer, hands raised. "Bradley, listen to me. You're my son. We can stop this. We can—" "I'm not your son anymore." He pulled a lighter from his pocket, flicked it. The small flame danced in his hand. "I'm the man you made me, and now you're going to burn for it." I had seconds, maybe less, and there was only one thing left to say, one truth that might cut through his rage. "That baby Veronica's carrying," I said. "It's not yours, Bradley. It never was." He froze. The lighter flickered in his hand. "What?" "Jordan Phillips, the architect. Veronica's been sleeping with him since last August. The baby is his, not yours." "You're lying?" "Leonard Foster told me you've been sterile since 2018. Medical fact. Veronica can't be carrying your child." I forced my voice steady. "Jordan Phillips told me the rest. Veronica paid him $80,000, your money stolen from me, to keep quiet, to stay away. She's been playing you for a fool this whole time." His face went white. "No, no, you're lying. You're trying to—" "Think about it, Bradley. When did she get pregnant? Right around the time you were stealing from me. Right around the time you needed to look stable for your promotion. A baby was convenient. A story. But it was never yours." "Shut up." His hands were shaking now. "She used you. Just like you used Margaret. Just like you've used everyone in your life." "Shut up!" he screamed. The lighter fell from his hand, onto the gasoline. The living room exploded into flame. The heat hit me like a physical blow, a wall of orange fire roaring up from the floor. Bradley stumbled backward, eyes wide with shock, like he hadn't really believed it would work, like he'd been playing a game and suddenly the rules were real. I turned and ran. The stairs were behind me, but the fire was spreading fast, racing along the gasoline trails Bradley had poured. The front door was across the living room. Impossible. Flames blocked the hallway. I was trapped. Smoke filled my lungs. I coughed, eyes burning, and ran toward the back of the house. The old bedroom, the window. If I could just... Behind me I heard Bradley's footsteps pounding toward the front door. He was leaving me to burn. I grabbed a chair, swung it at the bedroom window. Glass shattered. Cold air rushed in, feeding the fire, making it roar louder. I climbed onto the sill, looked down. Second floor. 12-foot drop onto frozen ground. I didn't have a choice. I jumped. The impact knocked the wind out of me. Pain shot through my ankle, my shoulder. But I was alive. I rolled onto my back, gasping, staring up at the house. Our house as flames poured from the windows. "Help!" I tried to scream, but my voice was a rasp. "Somebody help!" Across the street, a porch light flicked on. Mrs. Evelyn Cooper, our old neighbor, still living in the same house after all these years, stepped outside, saw the flames, saw me on the ground. And then she saw Bradley. He burst out the front door, still holding the gas can, and ran down the street. Mrs. Cooper pulled out her phone. I heard her voice, shrill and urgent. 911! There's a fire on Maple Street. And there's a man running away. I think he started it. She pointed her phone at Bradley recording. I'd never been more grateful for modern technology in my life. Sirens wailed in the distance. Fire trucks. Police. I lay on the frozen ground, unable to move, watching the house burn. 40 years of memories turning to ash. The firefighters arrived first, pulling me away from the heat. An EMT wrapped a blanket around me, checked my burns. Minor, mostly smoke inhalation. My ankle was sprained, maybe fractured. Then I saw Detective Roger Stanley running down the street, 2 uniformed officers behind him. They were dragging Bradley back. He fought them, screaming, thrashing, but they held him tight. His clothes reeked of gasoline. His hands were black with soot. Stanley walked over to me, grim-faced. "Mr. Hayes, you okay?" I nodded, coughing. Stanley looked back at Bradley, then at Mrs. Cooper, who was still holding up her phone. "Ma'am, did you record that?" "Every second," she said. Her voice was shaking, but her hand was steady. "I saw him run out with the gas can. I saw him light it. I saw him run away while Mr. Hayes was still inside." Stanley took her phone, watched the video. His jaw tightened. "Bradley Hayes," he said, walking over to my son. "You're under arrest for attempted first-degree murder and first-degree arson." Bradley's face twisted. I was trying to save him. I saw smoke, and I... Save it." Stanley nodded to the officers, who pulled out evidence bags. They confiscated the gas can, Bradley's fingerprints all over it. They took his jacket, his shoes, everything drenched in gasoline. Bradley looked at me wild-eyed. "Dad, tell them I didn't—" "You tried to kill me," I said quietly, "and I have a neighbor's video to prove it." Something snapped behind his eyes. The desperation vanished, replaced by cold, hollow rage. "Then I should have finished the job," he said. The officers dragged him toward the police car. An ambulance pulled up, EMTs rushing toward me. I heard Edward's voice. He must have gotten a call shouting my name, and then everything went blurry. I woke up in the ambulance, Edward's hand gripping mine. "You're okay," he said, his voice thick. "You're okay, Kiernan." Through the window, I saw the flashing lights of the police car. Bradley sat in the back, staring out at me. No remorse, no regret, just cold, empty hatred. This wasn't my son anymore. This was a stranger who'd killed his mother and tried to kill me. Edward squeezed my hand. "It's over. He can't hurt you anymore." I shook my head, coughing. "No, the real battle is just beginning. We have to make sure he never walks free." Edward nodded. "We will, I swear it." As the ambulance pulled away, I looked back one last time. Bradley's face in the window of the police car watching me. Not sad, not sorry, just cold. And I knew this wasn't over. The real battle would be in the courtroom. Bradley hired the best defense attorney money could buy, and Malcolm Pierce was terrifyingly good at his job. 3 weeks after the fire, I sat in Hennepin County Courthouse, watching the man who had tried to kill me sit polished and composed in a tailored suit. Bradley looked like a corporate heir signing a merger contract, not an attempted murderer. Pierce sat beside him, silver hair, perfect cufflinks, the sort who rescued disgraced CEOs for sport. I sat behind them with Edward and Sandra Powell. Sandra was usually unreadable, but even she looked taut around the eyes. Pierce will dismantle everything she warned. He'll turn Bradley into the wounded son of an unloving father. When the hearing began, the judge asked Pierce to outline his defense. He stood like he'd rehearsed in front of a mirror of marble. "My client suffered acute psychological collapse," he said. "His mother's death, career loss, and public shaming, orchestrated by his father, created a perfect storm. The fire was not violence, but emotional crisis. A tragic accident." Edward's fingers tightened on my shoulder. Prosecutor Marcus Chen rose. "The defendant poured gasoline throughout a residence and lit it while his father was still inside. Intent is not ambiguous." Pierce barely turned his head. "The state leans on 2 questionable evidentiary pillars. First, the audio recording from Hotel Ivy. Minnesota requires 2-party consent. It was illegally obtained." Sandra fired back immediately. "Minnesota is a 1-party consent state. Mr. Hayes was in the room. It's lawful." Pierce raised a single finger. "Expectation of privacy statute. A private suite alters the threshold." The judge didn't look at Pierce, just scribbled notes. "I'll review before trial. Proceed." Second, Pierce continued evidence from the storage unit, forged records, medication bottles. "The entry was a Fourth Amendment violation. It must be suppressed." Sandra's jaw shifted because we both knew he was right. "Even without the storage unit, we have admissible proof. Video of the defendant fleeing with a gas can, accelerant forensics clothing soaked in fuel, and Leonard Foster's testimony regarding poisoning Margaret Hayes." Pierce nodded slowly, like a man admiring an opponent's chess move. "The jury will still be prejudiced by mention of unlawfully obtained evidence. I move to exclude all reference." The judge sighed. "Ruling to follow." Pierce wasn't finished. "As for Mrs. Cooper's video, it shows my client leaving a burning home but not lighting it. He may have panicked. He may have been retrieving accelerant to prevent spread." Sandra stared. "He was holding a gas can." Pierce didn't blink. "A man inside a fire may do irrational things to save others. I couldn't remain silent. He tried to kill me. The gavel cracked. Mr. Hayes, speak again, and I will remove you. The hearing dragged on suppression psychiatric reports, procedural duels Pierce seemed to enjoy. Eventually, the judge delivered provisional rulings. Audio appears admissible. Storage unit evidence in question. Trial set for 6 weeks. I exhaled. At least Bradley would remain locked up. 2 hours later, Veronica arrived in designer sunglasses and posted bail with her family's money. Bradley stepped into daylight-free suit, crisp expression, serene like a man leaving a conference instead of arson charges. I watched them exit. Bradley didn't turn once. Pierce did. He approached me with that glacial smile reserved for men who never lose. Mr. Hayes, he said softly, I will dismantle your narrative, your evidence, your credibility. Your son is not a monster. He is a victim. Juries love victims. Then he tapped the folder in his hand almost tenderly and walked out beside Bradley. My son's spine straight-paced measured as if the courthouse were a private club he frequented. Sandra joined me. Everything will be challenged. Nothing will be clean. Edward squeezed my shoulder. We'll win, he said, but even he didn't sound certain. I didn't answer. I just watched Pierce guide Bradley through the revolving door like an usher escorting royalty. That was when I finally understood the deeper threat. Not the son who poured gasoline and struck the match, but the attorney who could convince 12 strangers he hadn't meant to. For the first time since Margaret's death, since the poisoning, since the flames licking up my staircase, I felt something sharper than grief. Not fear of Bradley trying again, fear that he might never see the inside of a cell at all. 3 days before trial, our strongest witness vanished. Sandra called at 7 a.m., voice tight. Leonard Foster didn't appear for his pre-trial prep. Phone dead. Pharmacy closed. His house is empty. I think he's gone. I felt the floor drop. Gone. He packed a bag. No break-in, no struggle. He left willingly, she said. Without Leonard, the poisoning case collapsed. Margaret's diary was hearsay, medication switched. Couldn't be tied to Bradley. We still had arson and attempted murder, but his mother's death became suddenly fragile. Edward's jaw set. He didn't run on his own. He made one call. 20 minutes later, Catherine Walsh walked into the estate. Ex-FBI, sharp, efficient financial crime specialist. Your son's attorney isn't the only one who can play dirty, she said. Give me 48 hours. She tore through records. Within hours, she found the pressure point. 2 days before Leonard disappeared, an anonymous LLC had deposited $25,000 into his account. Catherine traced the LLC following shell paths until she hit the familiar endpoint Veronica Hayes' family trust. Witness tampering classic, Catherine said. Money to run threats, to stay gone. Can we prove it? Edward asked. In court, maybe. But that's not my priority, she said. Finding him is. Leonard had bought a one-way bus ticket to Chicago paid cash, but security footage caught him. He wants to disappear, but doesn't know how Catherine said already packing. She found him in 36 hours. Cheap motel, weekly rate, fake name. The clerk pointed his room out, immediately money talks. Catherine knocked at dawn. Leonard opened eyes, sunk face, sleepless. When she identified herself, he tried to shut the door, but she stopped it with her foot. You talk to me now, she said calmly. Or you talk to federal agents later. Running across state lines, taking money tied to a murder trial, that's federal time, Mr. Foster. His voice cracked. I didn't have a choice. Veronica said Bradley would blame everything on me, that I'd go away for life, and you believed her. I didn't know what to believe. I already confessed. I already switched the meds. Why testify and make it worse? Catherine stepped inside. Because right now you're an accomplice, but if you testify, you become a witness. Big difference. She showed him the immunity contract Sandra arranged, total immunity for Margaret Hayes' death. If he testified truthfully, probation at most for pharmacy violations. If you refuse, that deal disappears, and you serve the sentence Bradley deserves. He stared at the screen, shaking. I never wanted anyone to die, but she did, Catherine said, soft but firm, and you can help make sure it doesn't vanish into legal strategy. Tears came, then a nod. They returned to Minneapolis the next afternoon. Catherine led him straight into Sandra's office. The DA signed the deal before sunset. Leonard would testify on day 3. I saw him in the conference room. The guilt on his face should have brought anger. Instead, it just added to the exhaustion lodged in my bones. I'm sorry, he said, voice small. I know it changes nothing, but I need to say it. I didn't answer. Some truths don't need replies. Sandra took over. Trial in 2 days. You testify early. Be ready. Be clear. And don't deviate. He nodded, still trembling. Catherine packed to leave, but Edward stopped her. You saved the case. She shook her head. I just dragged him back. You saved it by refusing to break. When they were gone, Minneapolis lay cold beyond the glass. Leonard was home. Our witness restored the poisoning back on the table. But Pierce was still out there. Malcolm Pierce would not hesitate to shred a pharmacist on the stand. He'd turned Leonard into an addict, a liar, a desperate man selling false testimony to escape ruin. He'd argue the immunity deal was leverage, not truth. He'd turned Veronica into a misunderstood wife, Bradley into a pressured son collapsing under grief and ambition. And for the first time since Leonard returned, I thought we pulled him back, but could we keep him strong enough to survive? Pierce Edward stayed beside me, silent but resolute. Catherine promised 48 hours. She delivered in 36. But the real war would start when Pierce stood in that courtroom, voice smooth suit, perfect, waiting to dismantle the truth. Leonard was back, our foundation restored, but Pierce still had teeth, and Bradley still had money. The trial had not yet begun, but I could already feel the opening blow. Pierce would not attack the facts first. He would attack the witness. He would attack us. He would make my son look like the broken one, not the brutal one. Catherine had been right. We hadn't won anything yet. We'd only earned the right to walk back into the fire. The courthouse loomed 2 days away, and I finally understood that the disappearance had not been fear, but design. That every move Bradley and Veronica made had been months ahead of ours. Leonard's return brought relief, but not safety, because Pierce wasn't done, and Bradley, my son, wasn't finished burning what remained of us. 3 days before the trial, our key witness vanished. Sandra Powell called me at 7 a.m., her voice taut. Leonard Foster didn't show up for pretrial prep. His phone's dead, pharmacy closed, house empty. Kiernan, he's gone. For a moment I couldn't breathe. Gone how packed bags, no forced entry, no struggle. He walked out. Edward, hearing only fragments, took the phone and put it on speaker. Sandra, what does this do to the case? A long pause. Without Leonard, we lose direct testimony on the medication switch. Margaret's diary is hearsay. The bottles and dosage changes can't be tied to Bradley. We still have arson and attempted murder, but her death, our central charge, becomes extremely fragile. I sat down slowly. Rage, dread, and a familiar grief settled like weight on my chest. Bradley got to him. Threats, money, or both. We can't assume it, Sandra said, though she didn't sound convinced. But yes, it smells like witness tampering. Edward's expression sharpened something predatory behind his calm. I'm not letting him win by erasing the only voice that proves he poisoned her. He made one call. 20 minutes later, she arrived. Catherine Walsh, former FBI financial crimes and fugitive tracking. Hair tied back, leather jacket, no-nonsense posture. She shook my hand briefly. I've read the file. Your son's counsel is skilled. But he's not the only one who knows how to play dirty. Give me 48 hours. She got to work. Within 6 hours, she'd traced a suspicious deposit, $25,000 wired to Leonard, 2 days before he vanished. The source, an anonymous LLC. Catherine dug deeper, peeling through shell corporations until the name surfaced. Veronica Hayes' family trust. She paid him to disappear, Catherine said flatly. Likely threatened him, too. Classic witness tampering. Edward asked the only question that mattered. Is it usable in court? In theory. But I don't need it in court. I need it to find him. Leonard hadn't used cards after the deposit, but one debit transaction surfaced a bus ticket. Chicago one-way paid in cash. The security footage was blurry, but clearly him. He wants to vanish, Catherine said, collecting her bag, but amateurs always leave crumbs. She was in Chicago before midnight. By dawn, the second day, she'd found him at a crumbling motel, with weekly rates and stained carpets. The clerk pointed out his room immediately. Money still talks louder than fear. She knocked at 6 a.m. Leonard opened, hair unwashed face, gray with panic and sleeplessness. He recognized her badge before she spoke and tried to shut the door. Catherine stopped it with her boot. You can talk to me now, she said calmly, or to federal agents later. Interstate disappearance tied to homicide testimony isn't going to end gently. His shoulders sagged. I didn't have a choice. Veronica said if I testified, Bradley would turn everything on me. She said I'd go away for life. And you believe the woman whose husband hired you to tamper with medication? I didn't know what to believe, he cried, voice cracking. I already confessed to Kiernan. I already switched the drugs. Why testify and make it worse? Catherine stepped inside, closing the door behind her. Because right now you're an accomplice. But if you testify truthfully, you become a witness. There is a legal universe of difference. She showed him the document Sandra had prepared full immunity for Margaret's death if he took the stand, probation, and license loss, at most for pharmacy crimes. If you don't take this, she said quietly, you'll run until they catch you. And they will. And when they do, no deal remains. You'll serve the sentence Bradley deserves. He stared at the screen, swallowing hard. Tears came, not dramatic, just exhausted. I never wanted her to die, he whispered. I thought he just wanted her weakened, pressured, made dependent. You don't have to explain to me, Catherine said. Explain it to the jury. He nodded. Catherine had promised 48 hours. She delivered in 36. They returned to Minneapolis the next afternoon. Leonard walked into Sandra's office like a man moving toward execution or salvation, hard to tell which. The DA signed the immunity agreement before sunset. Leonard would testify on day 3. I saw him in the conference room afterward. He looked at me, not defiant, not cowardly, just shattered. I'm sorry, he said. I know it changes nothing, but I need to say it. I nodded once. I didn't trust my voice. Sandra broke the moment. Trial begins in 2 days. You'll be prepped tomorrow. Memorize nothing. Tell the truth exactly as it happened. Leonard agreed. When Catherine left, Edward clasped her hand. You saved us? She shook her head. I dragged him back. You saved it by refusing to break. The door closed behind her and silence pooled in the room. Leonard was back. We had our witness. The poisoning was on the table again. But Malcolm Pierce was still out there, sharp, polished, merciless. And he was about to face a pharmacist, trembling under oath with immunity papers like a target pinned to his chest. I stared out the window at the winter-bleached city. We had won Leonard, but the war was only beginning. They say time heals all wounds. I don't believe that. But I do believe you can build something new from the ashes. 4 months after the trial, summer came to Minneapolis. The city turned green and warm alive in a way that felt almost cruel after the long, brutal winter. I sold the Riverside County land, the $850,000 that Bradley had killed for. Edward didn't want to take half. It's yours, Kiernan. You earned it. But I insisted. You're my brother, and brothers share. He accepted finally with tears in his eyes. I used my half to open Margaret's workshop. It sat in South Minneapolis in an old warehouse space that had once been a printing press. High ceilings, good light, enough room for a dozen workbenches. I filled it with tool saws, sanders, drills, everything a person needed to learn woodworking, and then I opened the doors. Free classes, no questions asked, no requirements except a willingness to learn. They came slowly at first. A teenager whose school counselor thought he needed somewhere to focus his anger. An elderly woman who'd always wanted to build furniture but never had the chance. A single mother trying to save money by making her own shelves. I taught them the way I'd taught high school students for 40 years. Patient, clear, encouraging. Measure twice, cut once. I'd say standing beside a nervous kid holding a saw. And sand with the grain, not against it. You're working with the wood, not fighting it. They learned, they built. And slowly the workshop filled with laughter and sawdust and the smell of fresh-cut pine. One evening a woman named Lisa stayed late to finish a bookshelf she'd been working on for weeks. She was 35, raising 2 kids alone, working 2 jobs. Her hands were rough from labor, but they were steady on the sandpaper. "Mr. Hayes," she said as I helped her apply the stain, "you gave me a second chance, not just with this," she gestured at the bookshelf, "but with believing I could make something good. I won't forget that." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded and helped her carry the shelf to her car. Edward visited most Saturdays. He'd bring coffee, sit on a workbench, and watch me teach. Sometimes he'd pick up a tool and join in learning alongside the students. He paid the rent on the building, donated equipment, never asked for credit. Margaret would have loved this, he said one afternoon, watching a group of teenagers laugh over a birdhouse project. She would have, I agreed. Above the main workbench, I'd mounted a small brass plaque in memory of Margaret Hayes. A woman who believed in second chances. Students asked about her sometimes. I'd tell them stories how she used to hum while folding laundry, how she read a book every Sunday morning, how she believed people could change if you gave them the chance. I didn't tell them how she died. That wasn't what mattered. What mattered was that she'd believed in kindness even when it cost her everything. And now in this workshop filled with sawdust and hope, her belief lived on. I stood there one evening after everyone had gone home, the summer light slanting through the windows, and I felt something I hadn't felt since February. Peace. Not the absence of pain. Not the erasure of grief, but the quiet knowledge that I was doing something that mattered. That every kid who learned to build a table, every adult who found purpose in shaping wood, was a small act of defiance against the destruction Bradley had caused. I'd taught my son to build, and he'd learned to destroy. But here in Margaret's workshop, I was teaching others to build, and some of them, maybe most of them, would choose creation over destruction. The smell of wood, the sound of laughter, the feel of sandpaper smoothing rough edges. This was why I'd become a teacher, and Margaret, wherever she was, would have loved it. That was enough. I went to see Bradley one last time, not to forgive him, but to let him know I had won. 6 months after the trial, I drove to Stillwater Correctional Facility. The prison sat on the banks of the St. Croix River, gray concrete and razor wire against the Minnesota summer sky. Edward offered to come with me. I told him I needed to do this alone. The visitation room was cold, sterile. Bradley sat on the other side of the glass partition wearing an orange jumpsuit. He'd lost weight. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow. He looked older than 34. Prison had aged him. He didn't speak when he saw me, just stared. I picked up the phone. He picked up his, "Hello, Bradley," I said. He said nothing. I slid an envelope through the slot beneath the glass. A guard passed it to him. He opened it slowly, pulled out a single sheet of paper. An itemized bill, $650. Dinner service for Edward Sullivan. Evening of Margaret's death. $120 cleanup after unlawful eviction from Riverside Tower. Apartment $80, psychological counseling costs following familial betrayal. $200 final meal served at Riverside Tower prior to eviction. $250. Total due $650. Payment remittance. Margaret Hayes. Memorial Scholarship Fund estimated payment. Completion 16.8 years at $3 per 3 month. Minnesota DOC inmate wage. Bradley stared at the paper. Then he looked up at me, his expression unreadable. "You told me once that I owed you everything," I said quietly. "You were wrong. You owed Margaret everything, and now you're going to spend the rest of your life paying for what you did." He didn't respond. "I don't hate you, Bradley," I continued. "I pity you, because you're going to die in here and no one will remember you. Your name will be forgotten. Your life will mean nothing." I paused, letting the words sink in. "But Margaret, she'll live on, in every student I teach at the workshop, in every person who learns to build instead of destroy. In the scholarship fund that will help others long after I'm gone. She'll be remembered as a woman who believed in second chances and kindness and love, and you'll be remembered as the man who killed her." Bradley's jaw tightened, but he still said nothing. I stood up. "Goodbye, Bradley." I hung up the phone and walked away. I didn't look back. Outside, the summer air felt clean free. Edward was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against his car. "How did it go?" he asked. "It's done," I said. We drove home in silence. Not an uncomfortable silence, but the kind you only share with family. The kind that doesn't need words. As we passed through South Minneapolis, we drove by 847 Maple Street. The house had been rebuilt. A new family lived there now. I'd seen kids playing in the yard, a swing set in the back. Life had moved on, and so had I. I thought about Margaret, about the 42 years we'd shared the life we'd built, the son we'd raised. I thought about the mistakes I'd made, the things I'd missed, the ways I'd failed to see what Bradley was becoming. But I also thought about the workshop, about the students who came every week to learn to build, to create something with their own hands. About the scholarship fund that would help kids who needed second chances. About Edward, the brother I'd found in the middle of tragedy. Margaret was gone. That truth would never change. But she hadn't been erased. Her kindness, her belief in people, her love, it all lived on. Not in Bradley, who'd chosen destruction, but in me. In the students. In the community we were building, one piece of wood at a time. I walked out of that prison, and I didn't look back. Bradley was no longer my son. He was a stranger who'd destroyed everything I loved, but he hadn't destroyed me. Margaret was gone, But her memory lived on in the workshop in the students who learned to build instead of break in the scholarship fund that would help others long after I was gone. Edward and I drove home in silence, but it was a comfortable silence, the kind you only share with family. As we passed the old house on Maple Street, now rebuilt with a new family inside, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Not because justice was served, but because I chose to build something new from the ashes of what I lost. And that, I think, is what Margaret would have wanted. This is one of those grandpa stories you don't want to live through yourself. True story. I lost my wife, my son, my home, and nearly my life. But God gave me a second chance, not because I deserved it, but because He still had work for me to do. If you're watching this and thinking your family is too far gone, listen, don't wait like I did. I ignored the warning signs for years. Margaret tried to tell me Bradley was changing, and I dismissed it. I taught my son to build with wood, but I never taught him to build with integrity. That's on me. God teaches us that a house divided cannot stand. I learned that truth the hardest way possible. My son burned down our family home, literally and figuratively, because I failed to lay the right foundation. Here's my advice from an old man who's been through hell: pay attention. When someone you love starts acting cruel, don't justify it. Don't ignore it. Confront it with love, but with honesty. And if you're a parent, teach your children values, not just skills. I taught Bradley carpentry, but I never taught him compassion. That was my failure. This true story isn't just my tragedy, it's a warning. Grandpa stories like mine exist so you don't have to repeat them. God allowed me to survive that fire for a reason to tell you that even when everything burns, you can rebuild. Margaret's workshop stands today because I chose to honor her memory instead of drowning in bitterness. If this true story resonated with you, if you face betrayal loss or family pain, please share it. Leave a comment about your own journey. And if you believe these grandpa stories matter, subscribe to this channel. Your support helps me keep Margaret's legacy alive. God bless you all. And remember, even ashes can become soil for new